Hey, I am Holly Randall, and you can find my podcast, Holly Randall Unfiltered, on all podcast platforms, or you can go to youtube.com/Holly Randall Unfiltered. You can also check out my new magazine, Wet Ink, at wetinkmag.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja live in the dojo, aka the Dojo, and you know it's the John the Ninja Studios. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure to invite my next guest into the dojo and speak about her new project, Wet Ink Magazine. Now, this person I first heard on a very cold night in New Jersey, pumping gas, may I add. And when I stumbled upon her podcast, it was the first time I heard of her, but she had an interview styling I had not heard in a long time. Styling like Pierre Robert of 93.3 WMMR, style like the great Terry Gross from NPR, even the great Howard Stern later in his career where he had a reputation of making people feel comfortable on the show. And I had to know more about this individual. And little did I know that not only was she a director, a PA, an editing, a business manager, a set designer, she has her degree in world literature, and she's also now a Hall of Famer, but at the core, she was a photographer. Holly Randall has graced us with her presence on the show. And if you don't know Miss Randall, you need to do your history, ladies and gentlemen, because her mother and father were huge individuals in the world of adult entertainment, especially her mother, Suze Randall, who not only posed for Playboy and Hustler, but was a monumental figure as far as doing photography for the industry. And then Holly having the great sense of mind because after film school, photography was her bread and butter, but it just didn't seem right the way they were conducted it. She decided to help the family business and dove right into the adult entertainment, where she cleaved her own name in the industry, working also for Playboy and Twisties, but developing such human contact and such great relationships with everybody in it that she ended up starting a podcast when things got hard and heavy, but ended up exploding in ways she never thought. When she thought she was done with her career, it pulled her back in to do something that she's trying to do with her new magazine, Wet Ink, and that's give creators outlet and a positive voice to show others in the world that adult entertainment's just like everybody else. We're all human and we deserve just as much respect. And ladies and gentlemen, may I tell you, Miss Randall deserves all the respect. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present Miss Holly Randall. Mademoiselle, how are you today?
I'm great. Wow, somebody did their research.
You've lived such a fascinating life, and I have to really question, do you ever just sit back and dawn at just the sheer amount of things you've done? Does it feel like a blur? Does it feel like it was in the moment very, very slow, and then now that it's over, it felt fast? Have you really taken time to consider your career as a whole?
I do try to pause and have those moments. Obviously, when I'm being introduced in such an illustrious manner on a podcast, it is a good reminder of like, wow, I have done a lot in my life. But also, there'll be moments of, I really try to pause and have moments of gratitude about where I am in life because I think it's so easy to forget about what we have and only think about what we don't have. And I actually just recently moved into a new podcast studio, which is about three times the size of the one that I was in before, which was really exciting. And, you know, I I always feel like I need to make sure that I give credit to like the incredible people around me and the team that supports me because I couldn't have gotten anywhere to where I am in life without these people. But also, I try to give myself credit as well because like I got here because I worked really hard and because I cultivated these relationships and kind of sought these people out. So yeah, so there was a moment in my new studio yesterday. I was like, okay, like this is pretty great and you worked really hard to get here and have this and it's actually pretty amazing that you have this. And so like let's do a little bit of this for a minute before my brain goes back into like, okay, like what have we not achieved? What have you not done today? Where are you falling short? Which, I think is something that we kind of all, that trap that we all fall into, right?
And you've stated in other interviews how you've had to try and learn how to slow down. Like you would get the win and then you were on to the next one, and you've been working on trying to, you know what, let's enjoy this win.
Yeah. I remember Angela White said to me once, like, this is also what I love. This wasn't in a podcast, it was on the red carpet. Maybe it was AVN, but one of the reasons I love my podcast is because I feel like I really um garner a lot of wisdom from the people that I speak to. And I remember ask Angela White I mean, like every year she achieves something big, right? Like that woman is just a powerhouse. And I remember asking her, I was like, okay, so this is great. Like, what's next? And she was like, why do people always have to ask me what's next? You know what I mean? Like, can't we just appreciate what I've earned and where I'm at? And like, do I always have to be thinking about like what I'm doing next? Can't we just be in the moment of like what I've achieved now? And I was like, that's a really good point. And I think about that often.
With all the things that you have your hand in, you have such an appreciation for art. One thing I did love was the music. You love a bunch of different wide array of music. Ella Fitzgerald, your first big band was Led Zeppelin. And I was curious, when was the first time you heard Zeppelin? Because thinking about all the songs, all the bands I love, I just think like all of them correlated to more heavy metal, darker sounds. And then you say, "Oh, I love horror films, but I don't like death metal." So I did want to, poke and see when was the first time you heard Zeppelin and fell in love with different genres of music. And did you make the correlation like, you maybe you should like death metal when it comes to horror films?
So I actually used to listen to like Slayer and Iron Maiden and stuff in high school. I was really into punk and like so I was more into heavy metal probably like early high school years, and then I got more into punk later. I know I look like it's funny. I often think about how if I saw myself now when I was in high school, like how ashamed I would be at what like a basic bitch I've become. But that like brunch loving, UGG wearing person was always deep inside me, just, needed age to come out. But I used to like, I mean, Jane's Addiction was actually my first big favorite band. And I also love Primus. I used to, and I went through a phase where I went back and I listened to all the old stuff that I used to listen to in high school, like Operation Ivy and Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, Fugazi. And it was really great. I was like, oh my God, I forgot. Like Fugazi especially like holds up so well, like no effects. So yeah, so I used to like listen to some pretty hardcore stuff. I just, I guess I've sort of mellowed with age. But sometimes I dip back in there and I'm like, I still love the Pixies. The Pixies is still one of my favorite bands of all time.
I always try and make an association with the music we fall in love with our personalities. And I
Hmm.
love how you've kind of got your own personality going when you look at your parents, when you look at your brother and sister. Like your brother is a lawyer, your sister is in the medical field, and then you were the one to take up the mantle and stick with entertainment, but more so the photography and art. Your mom wanted you to be a writer, if I'm correct, which you did good.
Hmm.
When you were
Yeah.
up, was it more so of you still trying to find your place in this world while you gravitated to that music? Because I still know the stories about the horseback riding. That was traumatizing in itself to me because I know what it's like to get so far in a competition to get there, and then once you show up, they say no, you're done, and it's like you can't finish it. It's so heart-wrenching. And then all the stories of growing up, being a little socially awkward. I forget the name of the type of schooling, but it's a Cotillion school where you have to be proper and
Oh,
learn.
Cotillion. Yes, where you learn how to dance and have like table manners and you wear white gloves. And it's basically like school for debutantes, which is so far from like the kind of life that I lived. But yeah, so let's see. So okay, so the horseback riding thing. So that was actually never a dream of mine. That was my mom's. And my mom was very insistent that I ride horses my whole life because it was something that she loved and it was her way to spend time with me and also do what she wanted to do. But it was never my passion. And I actually tried to quit like many times because I wanted to do other things. I had other interests, but she didn't exactly mean a lot of choice. So when I won the preliminary championships and I was eligible for the Junior Olympics, I chose to quit. I was done. I was going to college. I wasn't going to, be under my mother's thumb anymore, and I was going to do what I wanted to. Went to college for a few years, and then came back to work for her, and ended up being under her thumb for the next 10 years. But I had a moment of freedom. So, and actually, I mean, honestly, that is sort of part of why I really hate it when anyone tries to trap me and make me do something that don't want to do. I want to have agency over my own choices, and that's really important to me. And it's actually really important to me the way I raise my daughter. I will never make her do something she doesn't want to do. I give her choice. I give her freedom. I give her agency. She has to like do an activity. She's doing four right now. But it can be her choice, and she needs to enjoy what she's doing, because I don't want to ever put her in the situation that my mom put her in, put myself in, sorry.
And that
So that was the horseback riding thing. It was I was very good at it, but it just like it wasn't something I really cared deeply about, you know?
you also stated certain things and certain lessons taught you learning how to lose gracefully.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your approach to why that's important to know how to do and how to do it properly. I've done it. I've gotten to like, hey, you're a good man. It's come back to help me in the future, but it's a dynamic. I'm like, mm. So what would be a loss that you took gracefully that in doing so correctly ended up being a benefit?
Oh man, there's so many. So yeah, I do believe that learning how to lose is one of the most important lessons that you can have in life. It's really easy to win, right? But it's very hard to lose. And I lost a lot as a kid, horseback riding mostly, because, though my parents could like afford to give me a horse and afford to put me in competitive shows, they couldn't afford to get me a good horse. So my horses were always very difficult and very problematic. My first horse used to refuse jumps all the time. So if in show jump, I did 3-day eventing. In show jumping, if your horse refuses a jump 3 times, you're eliminated. And that, or if it goes off course, and that would happen to me like a lot. And they, announce over the speaker, you're in the middle of doing your thing, and they just announce over the speaker, I'm like 10. They're like, number 5 has been eliminated. Please leave the arena. It's just like so humiliating. And my mom, and I would fall off a lot because she would refuse, and I catapult to go over her neck. And my mom always made me get back on. She's like, get back on and, get back on the horse, literally. And I do think that that was really important, because in the end, I did end up winning. I quit on a win. I won the preliminary championships at Flint Ridge. But all of those losses, rather than me stewing in my own misery and quitting, which is what I wanted to do, I was forced to get up and try again. And I think that that built into me a sort of resilience that has really benefited me in my career. Because as they say, the road to success is paved with failure, which I believe is very true. And I have only achieved what I've achieved because I have failed at a lot of other things. You know what I mean? Like there's many things that I've tried that have not worked and that have failed. I was working on a startup just last year. I had to finally resign from a startup that I had been working on for like 4.5 years. And I gave up all my shooting jobs for this. Like I gave up almost everything. But if I hadn't done that, I would not have met the people that I am working with now that enabled me to start my marketing agency, enabled me to start Wet Ink. And I would not have left this safe space that I had been working in for so many years that I loved. I was shooting at the end, I was shooting only for ALU brands. I was shooting for Twisties and Browsers, which was a great gig, and they treated me so well. But I mean, honestly, like I was just starting to get a little bit burnt out, I think. And I would have never left that if I hadn't been pushed to try this other thing that ended up failing, but ended up taking me down a path that led me to where I am now, which I'm so grateful for. So, and I'm the kind of person, and I say this all the time, and I think this is also what's made me a little bit more fearless in terms of taking on new opportunities, is that like I know that if I fail, I know that if things don't go my way, like I will figure something out. Like I'm like a cat. I always land on my feet, and I don't let it get me down. I don't, curl up in my bed and cry and say like I can't do this and I'm never going to be successful and this is never going to work. I'm like, okay, what's next? And I always have something else in my mind. I always have a plan B. I'm always thinking of an exit route. Like I'm never like satisfied with being in one place. I'm never complacent, because like life changes on a dime, and you have to be ready for that. And I feel like my early experience of losing has made me a winner in my adult life.
But such a powerful lesson. And shout out to the Arabian Vicky, the first horse.
It was such a pain in the ass, but I loved her. But Jesus Christ, that horse.
One thing I truly admire, aside from the podcast, I've given you praise before, but just how good you are at the art of that. But one thing I truly love is the photography. I love photos. I love the same idea of capturing a moment that will never happen again and being able to either sometimes you get the opportunity to present it the way you want, or you capture it in real time and you get to preserve it. I was so curious, what was that picture of in high school where you first had that feeling of, I want to do this. I like this. I know you were developing it, but I never got to actually find out what the picture was.
It was a picture of my sister. It was a picture of my little sister, and that one of the big fires had just happened in my area. I live in Malibu Canyon, and so my mom actually went with us, and we went to this like we went up. It was off Stunt Road, and it was this big burnt out area. And so it's like blackened trees and, blackened ground. And we put my little sister, who I think was like 10 at the time, who's beautiful. My sister was a Ford model when she was young. She was just like blessed with like Angelina Jolie lips and just like this amazing face. And I put her in like this, I had this weird white dress that had a extra layer that you could bring like a hood over as well. And I just shot her in this landscape as this kind of like ghostly figure. And it was in black and white and it was on film, of course, back then. And my mom came and I remember like helped me, um, you know, with the composition and all that kind of stuff. And the pictures just came out really amazing. I mean, I still have them, obviously, but it was the juxtaposition of this, young, innocent looking girl in white and this like blackened, charred landscape that really got me, right? And the contrast and everything, it just turned out so beautifully. And I just fell in love. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I can make, because I'd always wanted to be an artist. When I was young, I used to draw a lot. And but I was never very good at it. Like putting pen to paper. I took art classes and stuff, but I was just never that good of like a pen to paper artist. But photography was my way to make art without having to put pen to paper, and that's what I fell in love with.
Did you see a correlation between that and writing? Because I know Hemingway is one of your, I believe, is your favorite writer.
Yeah.
Did you feel like your style kind of became that sort of photography? Or do you think there's a better alternative artist that you could say is kind of what it mirrors? Because your style is very, very unique.
I mean, when you think about Hemingway's writing, it's actually not very descriptive. The narrative is moved by the dialogue between the characters, not so much a lot of description about you know, the space or what something looks like. So, and if I think about a lot of it's funny, right? Because I feel like there's two different kinds of photography that I do and that I love. And there's the photography that people generally know me by, which is like the glamour photography that I did for the adult magazines that has a lot of detail, that has a lot of color, that has a lot of pop, that has a lot of props, that has a lot of styling, a lot of jewelry, especially like back in the, 2000s. Um, and that's what I'm known for. And that stuff, like, it's all beautiful. But the original image that I fell in love with of my sister was a very simple picture, right? Like there was, it was black and white and some shades of gray, and there was no props and there was no jewelry, and she was wearing a simple, like, white kind of sheath. And if I look at a lot of my favorite photographs now, especially if you look at my book Dynasty, and you look at this like a lot of the stuff that I shot on film and stuff that I shot specifically for the book, it is a lot simpler and like pared down and doesn't have all of the accessories and stuff that like my glamour work does. So yeah, I feel like I have two distinct styles of me. One more commercial, and that's what like made me who I am and made the money that I made. And then the other kind is a lot more natural. And I think honestly that's kind of the stuff that I prefer.
And guys, I'm gonna plug it shamelessly. You can get Dynasty now. They got the printers working for them. They're shipping that out now. And it's a tribute, being that Miss Randall and her mother, they're keeping the legacy going. And she even has some shots that were 8 by 10. I wanted to ask you about that one too.
Yeah.
That is such a I'm not going to cuss much, but that is process when my uncle, he was in film school and I would help him out with shoots and sometimes model. I was playing guitar and piano one time, but he did 8 by 10 and watching him, I wanted to just drill a hole in my brain. It was so much that went into it and learning about it, I'm like, yikes, this is all we had back in the day. What particular shoots were used with that camera?
So there's actually a beautiful picture of Ivy Wolf that I have that I blew up huge from my gallery show that I have hanging in my office now that was shot on 8 by 10 film. And funny, I was looking at it yesterday because it's since I said like I moved into a new studio, I haven't put up everything yet. So it's kind of sitting on my desk. It's like right next to me, and the clarity is insane. It's something that like just is the quality is so different than like a digital camera. So Ivy Wolf, I shot on 8 by 10 film. Ashley Lane, I shot on 8 by 10 film. Leah Gotti, I shot on 8 by 10 film. Did I shoot Nicole An I know I shot Nicole Aniston on film. I'm not sure if I shot her on 8 by 10 or not. I'd have to see. I can't remember like off the top of my head, but yeah, the 8 by 10 camera was an obsession that came to me in pregnancy. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, um, I saw this documentary on, oh God, what was her name? I don't know why I'm spacing on her name, but she was a photographer who shot like all 8 by 10, and she shot beautiful content. There was a lot of controversy around her because she shot pictures of her kids, and some people felt like they were like sexualized pictures, but honestly, they're just beautiful art. So I can't remember her name. Anyways, her work's really beautiful. And I don't know, I just saw that and I was like, I need an 8 by 10 camera. I must have an 8 by 10 camera. And I became obsessed with this idea. So I just like I would try to go to bed at night and I would just be thinking about like the focal length of the bellows. And I mean it was nuts. Like pregnancy hormones was weird shit to you. And so I found a company in England that makes new 8 by 10 cameras, Intrepid. And so I bought an 8 by 10 camera, but then I had to find a lens and I didn't like know exactly what lens to get. And so it took me a long time to find that one out. And then there was a lot of learning curves and there was a lot of wasted film that happened before I got some shots that I loved. But it was a really cool experience. I'd love to pick it up again when I have time. Um, but yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just something really cool and different. And I wanted to get back into photography for the love of photography. I kind of stopped shooting for companies and I was working on making this book, and I wanted to go back to a world in which like there was still some risk, if that makes sense. Because back when I started photography and everything was on film, there was no digital cameras. So like if you didn't get the exposure right, if you didn't develop it right, if something went wrong with the loading of your film, you lost everything. And you didn't know until like a week later when you got your film back. Now you can take a picture on your phone or your digital camera and you see exactly what you're getting right away. And then you can take it again. You can also like retouch the shit out of stuff. Fuck, now you can make shit out of AI and never pick up a camera. But back then, like that did not exist. And I wanted to go back to that world where everything wasn't so instant and it wasn't so known and there was still like some mystery and skill and like I said, risk associated with the work.
The one thing that you have is this immense knowledge of everything from the lighting, from the actual posing, which is also a lost art, to just the camera's mechanics. Like if it breaks, I'm pretty sure you could maybe not fix it, but you know what's wrong. You could ascertain the issue. They
Yeah.
say our best works are usually the ones that are never seen. That's a Prince quote. And I
Mm.
about there are moments in time where if I just save that solo, I'd be the biggest thing. Or if there's something I did that didn't get credit, there's interviews I've had, et cetera, et cetera. And I dwell on that. Like I put so much into it. I have the full faith and love in it. And that's what makes that piece of work still loved. Is there any particular shots in Dynasty or that aren't in Dynasty that makes you feel like, you know what, this is some of my best work. It just, for whatever reason, didn't make the cut, or you just wish more people would see it?
I mean, I think a lot of it is the stuff that I started shooting towards the end, specifically for the book, right? It's I don't even know if it's all on my website, which nobody joins now anyways. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't know like the work that I've done on film, the black and whites, the 8x10s. They know whatever I shot for the cover of Pet House or whatever I shot for Playboy or Twisties, which, I love that stuff and it's beautiful and I'm proud of it. But yeah, some of my favorite photos. I mean, actually, some of my favorite photos that I shot for Playboy, they never published, but I keep everything that I shoot. I never throw it away. So I have those photos myself, but I don't own the rights to them, but they're just gonna they're probably never gonna get published and it makes me sad.
I don't know if you're at liberty to say, what country did the printers you were using for the Dynasty books get moved to? Because if, for those who don't know, everything was ready to go. You guys were going to print so you could ship. And then the printers got moved to a country that was more conservative, said, hey, we don't like this. And it was a fight. Could you explain?
I can't remember what it was. Alan told me, but I can't remember because it was gonna be printed in China and then the whole tariffs thing came up. And so then the printer moved their operation to eh, some, I think, like Islamic country that took one look at my news and they were like, absolutely fucking not. And yeah, we had to start all over again. We had to find a completely different printer. That's what took so long. But I think almost all, if not all, have been shipped out. And most people I know have gotten them. I've gotten like a lot of feedback. If there's anyone who's watching this and you haven't gotten yours, let me know. But I believe everybody should have gotten their copy by now.
It's funny, your parents taught you to question authority, and it did come back to kind of bite them multiple times down the road. It's all positive, but there's the story of they had the shed out back and they told you guys not to go in there, and you would break into now knowing that you're a punk rock girl, heavy metal girl, it makes sense more now. But that I see this dynamic of when you're doing something you're not supposed to, there's that thrill of the fear going in and seeing the work and appreciating the work as well. Was that another moment where you kind of had like, I want to continue doing photography? What sparked you to go, I have to see what's in there?
So it was the office. It was the back guest house, which my parents had repurposed into an office. And like I knew what they did, right? I mean, by the time I was a teenager or, early adolescence, I knew. So I knew there was porn back there. Like I knew there was porn magazines, right? They had a whole fucking shelf of porn magazines behind this door. And yeah, I knew where they hid the key. I mean, kids are fucking tricky. And so I'd sneak in there and I'd steal magazines. I'd like go to the middle of the pile and then I'd remember how many magazines down this one was. Like they would ever notice if something was out of order. And I'd take a magazine and I'd like sneak it back into the house and look at it for maybe a day and then I'd return it. Um, but I mean, I don't think it was necessarily like the love of photography. I was a kid, right? I was curious about sex and the human body, like every adolescent is. And, I was having my sexual awakening. So I wanted to look at that stuff. But what's funny? I do actually remember, because I don't think I ever looked at any of my mom's work and I was like, wow, this is a piece of art. But what I do remember seeing, so I don't know if you remember all the old Elvira pictures, like the ones of her in the theater with like the smoke and the skeletons and that was my mom. My mom shot all of Elvira's promotional materials. Yeah, and I remember seeing those and I was like, this is amazing. Like, wow, this is incredible. And it was my mom. So I think the first time I realized that my mom was actually really talented was seeing the content that she shot of Elvira.
That's such happy news. Of course, I know who Elvira was. Don't hurt my feelings. Your parents at such a high bar. And they're always telling you like do what you want, and they're trying to push you, but you're still trying to gauge it. Sometimes that can build resentment. And I know especially your dad was good at trying to break that when your mom was at the tail end of her career. It's just natural. We don't want to give up what we've always been. She's not going to be doing photography anymore, and now she's seeing you rise as well. It creates an interesting power struggle, and I've gone through that with my father, and my mother's kind of been the catalyst of easing it out. But one thing I always appreciate is there's always a story where, if it's a stranger, if it's a family member, there's always this story where dad did something and truly made that difference in somebody's life. Or mom did something. One of my best stories is she's a nurse as well. And there was an HIV patient during the epidemic, and nobody could calm her down. She threatened somebody, and my mom just came over just for you. All right, so you know what you got. Why are you going to do that? And they start laughing, and you're like, but giving that peace. And your mom has been over and over again, saving people's lives, getting them back on their feet. I was wondering if there were any particular stories that still hold true to that for you. Like when you first heard it, it kind of calmed that tension if you guys were going through it. Just, you know what, I really appreciate what my parents have done and what they've allowed me to do.
I don't think like I realized why, I don't think I appreciated my mom, and I understood why she got competitive with me and everything until later. Because first of all, like I'm in my 20s, right? I'm ambitious. I also like had a raging drinking problem. So this is before I got sober. So, like most good alcoholics, I'm totally self-centered, completely selfish. I don't think about other people and like what they might be thinking or their perspective. It's all about me, 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 me. And I'm a victim, and why is the world against me and all that shit. So honestly, it wasn't until like I went through the program and I started to take accountability for my behavior and started to see like my character defects and how my behavior contributed to a lot of my own problems, right? Like it, we are always a part of the problem, right? Like people don't do things like to us. Um, People do things for themselves. And yeah, so it was through a lot of therapy and a lot of like self-reflection and a lot of hard work that I finally started to like see where my issues lay, and then started to understand why my mom behaved the way she did, and started to see like how ungrateful I had been and how ungracious I'd been. And it really changed things. It also helped, honestly, that I left and stopped working for them and went and started my own business. That was really helpful because my mom, as much as I love her, she's not an easy woman to work with or deal with. And anybody who knows her well will say that. Like she can be very difficult. And once I started to do my own thing, our relationship improved drastically. And that was really the best thing for us because then she could be proud of me, and she didn't feel threatened by me because I wasn't like trying to tell her how to run her website or do her thing. And then, obviously like eventually she stopped shooting on her own because she just I mean she lost an eye. That wasn't helpful. And she got kicked in the face by a horse. But she also, just got to a point where like it was just too stressful for her, and she was too old, and then one day she just stopped.
The fact that you guys have been able to rebuild that relationship and it's stronger than ever now. And you've also touched on your alcoholism. I got to do a shout out to Tommy Gunn. Guys, if you haven't noticed, everybody that's been on my podcast, they were on hers first. That's who I went to study. I studied Holly podcast to get my stuff correctly for when they showed up. But he was really big on not just the idea of like you have to realize there's a problem, but going after it, making sure that you're comfortable with yourself. And it was such an amazing interview I had with him. When was the moment you realized I need to at least attempt? Because you did two stints in rehab, and what I really also wanted to know was who's the first person that reached out to you the first round, because it was outed unexpectedly and it was going to be a source of, oh no. But I know Seth Gamble reached out to you. I know a couple of others that reached out to you, but I wanted to know who was the first person to help you in that journey, because mental health is a lot better now. But back in the day, if you had a problem, you got excommunicated.
Yeah, so when I first got sober, I was like, I can't possibly do this. I work in an industry where like everybody drinks, everybody parties, nobody's sober. I will be the only one. How am I going to go to AVN sober? Like, how can I possibly do this? I'm going to be such an outsider. This is insane. And I felt really lonely, as most alcoholics do, because it's this isolating disease. And I ended up getting outed by Luke Ford for going to rehab. And I actually had just been hired by XBIZ to write a column for them. And so I wrote my first column for XBIZ in rehab. And I wrote about how I was in rehab because I was like, fuck it. And Christian Mann from Evil Angel reached out to me. And this was someone that like I didn't know very well, but I like deeply respected. He was a really big name back in the day. He was, second only to like, John Stagliano. And he reached out to congratulate me on getting sober, and he let me know that he was also sober and had been in the program for a long time. And I know that I can say this because he's been open about it publicly, so I'm not outing him. And that meant a lot to me. I was like, oh my gosh, here's this person who I admire so much, you know, who like to me feels like too big to even know who I am. And he's reaching out with like support. And if someone like him can be sober and successful in this industry, like maybe I can do it. And then other people reached out to me as well. I can't honestly, off the top of my head, remember who some of the other people were, but I remember like he was one of the first. And that meant a lot to me. And I did relapse since then. But that was that first kind of seed planted in my mind where I was like, oh, I'm not alone. There are like other alcoholics out there that I can relate to. Because before I understood what alcoholism was and what an alcoholic was, like I thought, like most people do, that alcoholics are the kinds of people who like drink out of brown paper bags and like live under a bridge, you know? I didn't think that it could be somebody who was respected and successful and maybe just hiding it or maybe not hiding it. I didn't realize that it can touch anybody no matter your social status, your financial situation, your looks, your popularity, your talent, like whatever, it doesn't discriminate. And that was the first step on like the long road of understanding what alcoholism was and understanding and coming to terms with it, right? And accepting that that's what I was and this was my life.
The whole relapse was an accident. It was accidentally having an edible.
There was two.
What?
Well, okay, so the first relapse was almost not a relapse because I didn't really think that I was an alcoholic yet. So I went to rehab because I couldn't stop drinking. But I thought like I didn't fully accept that I was an alcoholic yet. I was like, well, I just need to go somewhere for 30 days. I'm just stressed out. I need to relax. This is like you're gonna hear this like this hail from so many people who've gotten sober. Like it's so hard to accept that you're an alcoholic. It's like, it's the as they say, it's the last house on the block. Like nobody wants to be a fucking alcoholic. It's not something that anyone is, ascribes to be. And yeah, and I just thought, oh, I just need to go away for 30 days and learn how to drink like a lady. And so I did. And I came home and I had saved a bag of weed for when I got home because I was like, well, weed's not my problem. Alcohol's my problem. I'm not going to stop smoking weed. So I got home, I smoked my bag of weed, and, went about my day. And I didn't drink for a few months. And then it was my birthday. I think it was like my 28th birthday. And I went out to dinner with my family and I ordered a glass of wine. And my mom looked at me and she was like, wait, just need for you to go to rehab. What are you doing ordering a glass of wine? And this is a scary thing about alcoholism, right? Um, I took her hand and I looked her in the eye and I said, Mom, I now understand a lot more about alcoholism. I was a problem drinker. I know why I did it. I have knowledge now. And I promise you, I'll never, ever be like that again. And I meant it. Like, I really meant it. I thought that I had conquered it. I thought the knowledge that I had gained in rehab was all I needed to not fall back into that same pattern. And sure enough, just like anybody else, 6 months later, I was right back to where I was and completely powerless, and knowledge did nothing for me. And then I went back knowing that I was a real alcoholic. And I went to rehab. I went to sober living afterwards. I started going to meetings, and then I was sober for 7 years. And then I had the accidental relapse eating an edible. So that's how my story went.
One thing that everybody has to go through is this acknowledgement of a higher power at some extent. I was talking to Kenny, typo negative, and he said something that was really weird, but it made sense. He said, everybody prays. Even if they believe or don't believe, whatever, everybody prays. And that really put in perspective what Nikki Sixx in his book said, like, hey, just acknowledge there's more to this than what we're seeing. I wanted to know what was the moment for you where you kind of hit that, okay, I have an idea of what reality is. Now we can restart, excuse me, repairing this issue, repairing this disease. So now I can fight against it and no longer have it take hold of my life.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think I had so much of like that white light moment, right? Like I think I kept waiting for that. For me, it was more of like a slow burn. I just, there was no, I mean, they say, you know, you've hit bottom when you stop digging, right? And there was no like one incident that occurred that I was like, okay, I'm done, right? I think I just was sick and tired of waking up sick and tired. I was so ill. I was having the DTs every morning. I was shaking and sweating. And I mean, I was like detoxing constantly. I was just poisoning myself. And the hardest thing, honestly, about getting sober the second time, like after the 7 years, and that it took me 4 years to get there, was that like I knew what was on the other side, right? Because the first time I got sober, I didn't know what it was like to be sober. I thought, oh God, my life will no longer be fun. I can't go to Italy and like drink champagne. I can't toast, you know um somebody at a wedding. Like there's all these things I can't do. And I didn't realize that like I could actually have a life and not miss any of that and still really enjoy life. So it was, a concept I didn't understand at the time. But after I'd been sober for 7 years, built a wonderful life, been really happy, and then relapsed, and then still couldn't get sober for like 4 more years. And knowing like how much better life was being sober was just another one of those moments where you realize that like knowledge is not enough, you know? Like it's weird. It's like I knew life was better. I knew I wanted to get sober, but still like couldn't get there. And and that was the crazy thing. And that's where like the sort of magic, I guess, of like your destiny comes in at some point. Because I used to just out and I kept going to meetings. Like I was trying, and I'd go to meetings and I'd sit in the front row with people who loved and supported me, and I just cry the whole time because I just couldn't get it. And I remember asking a friend of mine, I was like, when am I going to stop drinking? Like I'm doing the things, I'm coming to the meetings, I'm like, I got a sponsor, like all this bullshit. Like what is wrong with me? And he said something to me that I don't know, may not make sense to other people, but for some reason it made sense to me. And he said, being an alcoholic is like being fucked by a gorilla. You're done when the gorilla's done. And I was like, and for some reason, I was like, oh, I just like, I just have to keep going. And like, I just have to keep going. And eventually, like, because I know this is not my destiny, like something will happen and I will get there. And that's what I did.
Kind of scary in context, but I love it. It's so romantic. I told you I was gonna hit this up. Your husband and
Mm.
stories of, meeting him on Tinder and being a little jaded and not trusting him. It's like, what, do you want to make me dinner? That doesn't make sense. But then you hear
Hmm.
stories of he told you, I'm not giving up on you. There's something more. And then lo and behold, when you needed his help because the alcoholism, he's breaking down doors, not just on two occasions, but more, and really went the distance for you. I was wondering if you were able to have those conversations with him after when things got better and just be like, what was that moment you knew I was the one? Because I'm over here like, huh? Wait, you got a micro? Like, what's the problem? But for people, when they know, they just go all out for it. I wanted to know if you got to discuss that with him because that's so heroic. He just seems like that stand-up guy. Prior to what I found out about him in our previous interaction, it's just, he says what he says, has this confidence, unwavering, doesn't care what people say. And it's always fascinating to see like when a person like that knew, it's like, when was the exact moment?
Yeah, I don't know. He's just like a different kind of person. And, before I met him, I had always had commitment issues. I was always the one who ended the relationship. I couldn't go longer than a year. I'd get bored. And I was married before he was from England and we got married. I barely, I didn't really know him. It was very impulsive, which is not like me. I'm not a particularly impulsive person for the most part. And and I, kind of instantly regretted it and spent the rest of the marriage 4 years trying to get out of it. Um, and after that, like I really just sort of felt like I was broken. And I think part of the reason that he was able to guilt me into staying for so long was because he would tell me, like you just have commitment issues. Like you just there's something kind of wrong with you. Like you're not really able to love people, like you're emotionally distant, which is kind of true. And you're not able to like love people like normal people, but I can put up with that, right? I love you so much that I can handle you not returning that love and I can accept that. Um, and yeah, he just made me think like, I was like, okay, there must be something wrong with me because it's true. Like I've never really had a long-term relationship where I really felt super connected to somebody and it felt right. People say like, oh, when you meet the right person, you'll just know. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Because like I'm like, that's never happened to me. Like this can't be this. And I thought maybe it just wasn't for me. Um, so after I left him, I finally accepted like I might just be single for the rest of my life and I can be okay with that. Like that will be all right. And then I met my husband. And look, to be honest, like I didn't fall in love with him on the first date at all. I liked him, obviously, enough to go on a second date. But at the beginning, because I was also like looking for red flags, like I was sure there was something wrong with him, like there is with everybody. So like every little thing set me off. And all of these things that he would I remember he used to drink this flat white latte. And I'd never heard of this before. I guess it's like an Australian way of making a latte. And I remember him telling me he was ordering a latte and he was telling me about this flat and he sent me this long text message about this fucking latte. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the most pretentious motherfucker I've ever met in my life. Like, what the fuck is this guy? Like, this is so dumb. But like, I don't know. But like I said, I liked him. So I kept seeing him, but I wasn't serious about him. I was sleeping with other guys. I was still sleeping with my ex-boyfriend and I was sleeping with my neighbor and, like I was just having fun and I thought he was too. And then he said to me, like, I don't know, maybe a week or 2 weeks into our relationship, he said, I just want to let you know that I've retired my dance card, so to speak. I think that's the way he put it. And I was like, huh? And he's like, I'm not dating anybody else. I'm like cutting off, relationships and conversations with all other girls because I know you're the one for me. And I was like, whoa, 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 dude, that's a lot. And like, I did not sign up for that. And I'm not gonna do that. I'm like having a good time here, I'm seeing other people and I'm not prepared to like commit to you. That's not what I'm after. And he was like, that's fine. He's like, I'm not asking you to. You can do whatever you want. It's like, I just know for myself, like, there's nobody else I want to be with. And so you do what you want to do. You date other guys. And when you're ready, like, I'll be ready for you. So that's fine. We can just keep going on as we are. I just wanted to let you know, like, from my end, I'm no longer seeing other people. And he said it with such casual confidence that I was just like, what? Wait, you don't care? You don't care if I'm sleeping with other guys, but you're going to be committed to me. But I like it was such a foreign concept to me. And he was so confident that I would see that he was the right choice, that it really caught me off guard, especially because my last husband had a lot, like, did not have that kind of like self-esteem, and he was insecure and he was super possessive of me, which is what made the relationship just, you know, like explode because I can't stand like feeling trapped. Um, and so, a, a week or two or something went on, and I just kept seeing, I saw the other guys a few times, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. And then I just came to realize like he was right. Like he was the one for me. And I still didn't know like if I was in love with him, I think, because I was still too scared to go there that fast. But I was willing to give it a try. And, it's just felt like natural and right ever since the beginning. Like I've never been with anybody, and we'll be together 10 years in June, where I never for a second doubted that he was the right person for me. Like there's not in my like our worst moments have I ever doubted that he is the right one for me. And that has never happened to me before. And they say when you know, you know, and I just knew. So now I'm one of those people who will say to others is when you know, you know. And I don't know how to describe it, but you'll just know.
That was actually beautifully stated. And I'm taking notes. Casual confidence, not overly confident. Got it.
I mean, I think ultimately, like people try so hard to do this or to do that to like hold on to somebody. I had conversation with somebody recently about girls like who won't sleep with a guy at the beginning because then they think that like they won't like them or they won't call them the next day or something like that. And I've never been that way. I've always been like, let's if I want to have sex, let's have sex. I don't, you know what I mean? Like my, I'm not holding sex as like a prize that you have to like earn, right? And I think that some people just try too hard to project or be somebody that they think this other person will want. But it's like, in the end, the right person for you is the person who loves you who you are. So, like, you should probably be who you are from the beginning. And sure, like, you'll, there'll be a lot of people that won't work out because that's just how relationships, that's how love is. If you were destined for everybody in the world, then it wouldn't be so special when you find the right person. Like it's not supposed to be that easy. That's why the right person is the right person.
And seeing how your husband has, again, done so many things for you, I think he kind of mirrored the Valentine's Day story of your dad for years, sending you the cards. And then when we hear stories of something happened, he broke down the door, made sure you were safe. Okay, you know what? We had these leaks. Mademoiselle, these pictures aren't doing. You know what? Give me a camera. I'll take you to a nice place and we'll take the pictures. He was constantly encouraging and just showing he was there for you. And I think it mirrored the Valentine's Day story in years as well. Is that too much of a stretch for me to assume that?
No, I mean I loved my father, and I always wanted to find somebody that was like him. And yeah, my dad is somebody who really loved and supported and respected my mom. And, like I mentioned before, like my mom is not, it's not an easy woman, to deal with a lot of the time. But my dad could do that, like he was okay. And my mom will say this herself, like he was okay everything being about her, like nothing was about him. Like when they started dating, she got into modeling and then started doing photography to support his writing career. She thought that he was going to be like a world famous novelist, and she just needed to make some extra money just till he got there. But what ended up happening was my mom became the success. My mom became like, the legendary artist. And my dad, he wrote some books, but like they never really took off. But that was okay. Like my dad was never like jealous of my mom. He never resented her for her success. I mean, honestly, like he built the business with her. If it wasn't for my dad, like she never would have gotten to where she was because he was a savvy businessman and he was really smart and he was cautious. My mom is extremely reckless, and she, was blowing up relationships left, right, and center. So she needed somebody who could center her and take care of all the other little things that it takes to run a successful business. And my dad was that person. So, my dad is just as um, responsible for her success as she is. But yeah, I mean, he was okay with it being the Suze Randall show. like that. And my husband is the same. Like it doesn't need to be about him, right? Like he's okay letting me take the spotlight, which there can only be one star in this relationship, and that drives me.
Sounds so spot on. Knowing your dad's love for the Roman Empire history, he had this stoic approach to life. Even when he spoke, it
Yeah.
was in presence, and you can hear. He would you would ask him the most simplest question or the most complicated question, and then he's just it's like he thought 1,000 years worth of information to give you the response, and it's so cool. It's like, yo, this guy knows what he's talking about. I
Yeah,
can't.
my dad's one of the smartest people I've ever met. My husband's also really smart, and very knowledgeable. My husband was actually a poli sci major, so he knows a ton about politics and all of that kind of stuff. So, and a lot about history as well. So there's a lot of similarities there.
Wet ink. I love
Mm.
this project. It is an extension of what I think is lacking in not just pop culture, but the world. For as much as the United States consumes pornography, as liberal as we are, there's this pseudo-Christian entity that's still hanging on to like, no, we can't, but then they do it anyway, and then they still it creates a form of hypocrisy. And I feel the magazine is layered in a way that is not only tasteful but beautiful. And I just wanted to know when starting it, with all the things you learned from doing the podcast, with all the stigmas you've dealt with the insurance issues, trying to do this and that, trying to find locations. I wanted to know what was some of the most, there's a word for it, it's called expensive knowledge that was most useful to starting the project after the other project fell through.
I mean, honestly, like I, what I really wanted Wet Ink to be was I wanted it to feel like something that belongs to the community. And I've learned so much from about sex work and about my fellow sex workers and my colleagues from the podcast. And it's given me such a respect for the industry and the people in it. And they have so much to say that I really wanted this publication to feel like it gives, people a voice and a platform, kind of like how my podcast does. And I also wanted to make sure that it gave a voice and a platform, not necessarily to like the people with the biggest followers, right? Because unfortunately, I have to say, like with my podcast, living in a capitalistic society as we do and having sponsors who expect like certain numbers and like download, and it's a competitive market. Like I do have to be a little bit more particular about who I have on as guests because if they don't pull in like big viewers, uh, I the reports back to my sponsors are not good, and then they don't support my show anymore, and then I can't fund it, and all that bullshit, right? So unfortunately, sometimes I feel like I've had to pass up. I really try to like mix it in, and I try to get in guests that I feel like have a really good story, and I know may not like get the numbers that like an Adriana Chechik or like a Riley Reid will get, but like I feel like who have something valuable to say. But I still have to be somewhat selective about who I have on, like just for that reason, right? Like it's a show that people are, giving me money to get exposure, and so if I don't get them those numbers, then there's a bottom line. But with Wet Ink, um, I have a little bit more freedom to give a space and a voice to people who don't necessarily have millions of followers on Instagram, right? And who have something to say and who have a voice and experience. Because there's so many people that have really important things to say in this industry, and I feel like they don't get heard as often as they should. And so I really wanted to give people like more space for that with Wet Ink. And yeah, there's been actually a lot of creator contributions lately. I think I've got 4 or 5 up right now, and I've got a few more in the can. And I'm like super grateful that people are want to use my platform to tell their story and that they, are reaching out and they say that they really like what I'm doing. And I just really wanted the magazine to feel inclusive of people, and I wanted it to be a place where people could really talk about their experience and um, somewhere that hopefully other creators could see a story that like they connect with, and it's not just about the performers who have millions of followers and who have done amazing things. Obviously, I cover those people too because I think like, it's a testament to how hard they've worked to get there, but I also like I want everyone to have a voice and I want everyone to, have a place where they can go where it's really demonstrative of the entire industry, right? Because the sex work community is made up of so many different kinds of people and they all deserve a voice and they all have great stories and they all have things to say. And I just wanted to give them a place that they can say that. Like I want the magazine to feel like it belongs to the sex work community because I feel like I belong to it. It's given me so much. I'm so grateful to, the adult industry for the life that it's given me, for the friendships that it's given me, the opportunities that it's given me. And I don't know, maybe this is like my little way of giving back, hopefully.
Ladies and gentlemen, so you know the issue comes out quarterly, and the last issue, which recently just was dropped, had a whole section on disabled performers, disabled adult sex workers. And I've always been an advocate for making all types of sex work legal because there are people that just don't have the ability to go out and deal with those sexual desires or needs, whether or not they're stuck at home in a wheelchair, they're disabled, maybe they might be socially awkward. I think that's a very vital part to the human condition and existence. And I think the article, when I went through it, did a great job of just outlining the things that they have to go through, helping and making money. I know Ryan Keeley is one who's also disabled, was unable to work, and followed in the sets work. So I wanted to know, when was the first time that was brought to your attention for the magazine, and what were your thoughts after seeing what was written?
I think the first time that it ever occurred to me fully how beneficial sex work could be for disabled people was, I think, actually with a conversation with Lena Paul. And I think we were just talking about how we were talking about like mental illness, right? And how people think that like everyone in the adult industry is mentally ill. And she pointed out that first of all, not the case. But secondly, like for people who are mentally ill, it is actually can be a very beneficial line of work to fall into because it's not a 9 to 5 that you absolutely have to stick to, right? Like if you're bipolar or something and you're having an episode or you're prone to depression and you need to take some time off because you've got to deal with your own mental health struggles, like it allows you the flexibility to do something like that where like a regular 9 to 5 job would not, right? Like you can't just not show up to work for a week. You'll get fired. And so like the flexibility that it does allow people is a haven for people who may be struggling with mental health issues. And that's more about just the accessibility of the work and less about like that you have to be a damaged, like crazy person to want to do porn.
Just seeing the benefits of when people have more outlets. I always notice how when things are constrained, that's when people start having more issues. When they have opportunity, people want to work. People want to be contributing to society in their own way. And I just think that the adult entertainment industry gives so many different jobs. I don't know if he wants his name mentioned, but he was one of your film crew who started from actually working mainstream and then went and started working in the adult industry, and you had to give us some time, didn't want to be in the same room when the girls were masturbating.
Oh, Jeff.
Okay, we can say Jeff
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
But
He's
no,
actually he's
usually it's
actually
the
like
opposite,
he's he's my business partner now.
but
So
so integral. One thing I do really love, and back to the tasteful presentation of the ladies of the pictures, was Creators in Bloom. And I absolutely adore that. I think you and Cherie DeVille were going to do a shoot that she goaded you into doing for that, but she's part of it and quite a few others. I wanted to know, were you thinking of trying to drag her in a good positive way? And when I say that, please know that, to do wedding, because she's already a writer. She's accomplished all these things. She's so articulate and such a big voice for freedom of speech. And you guys have such a wonderful relationship. I was wondering if you were trying to also have her come on, or is this more so for all creators to come as they please? Is there any other staff that are like going to be mainstays?
it's funny that you say that because I was actually just thinking about that like literally I think yesterday, the day before. I was like, I should have Cherie to write some stuff for Winning. But yeah, I really like just, One person I did go after was Melrose Michaels because I know that, she is somebody who literally like makes a living off of educating sex workers on how to, run a better business and make money. So I was like, she like obviously for the educational part of the magazine, she's perfect. So she's someone that I, immediately came to mind. Um, and yeah, I do plan on bugging Cherie about it. I just know that Cherie's really, really busy. So I think I've just been giving it some time and respecting her uh crazy schedule. But yeah, I really just I wanted to open it up to people who, have something to say but don't necessarily have like a big platform to say it on and who want a place to tell their story. And I don't necessarily need it to be, somebody it doesn't have to be someone I know, right? Because there's so many amazing people in this industry that I don't know, that I haven't had an opportunity to meet or work with. So, what a great way to get to know a whole new group of amazing people.
You actually saw Alexander Pascal off of Holly,
Yeah,
and I wanted to know what about his work hit right for you.
their work is very, I mean, first of all, like the dreamy film feeling along with the kind of like glow to it felt just really vintage, and also that it's all like fetish, right? And I love fetish photography. I think it's so interesting. I used to shoot for Taboo and stuff a lot, and the way that they like juxtapose, a girl in a full latex cat jumpsuit, just like drinking milk, like sitting on the grass. Like that, I'm always fascinated by the juxtaposition of things that don't feel like they belong together, right? Like that goes back to like that first photo shoot I did with my sister, like the, innocent looking like girl in white and the black charred landscape. Like I love that kind of stuff. And so when I came across their work on Instagram, I was like, I just never heard of them before, just really love their work, and I really want to support other photographers because I think there's so many talented people out there, and I just want to give them a place to show off their amazing work. And yeah, when I reached out to them, they were like all for it, and I still need to publish that. That's actually in my schedule queue because I still need to publish some of the articles that were in the magazine into onto the website. And Alexandra's stuff is something that I still need to move over there. So that I'm probably going to publish that like in the next couple weeks.
We do have to give respect to Strip Chat. We're gonna plug you guys. Strip Chat, Strip Chat, Strip Chat. And having done so much business, having doing so much back and forth, yes, they are literally the biggest streaming service in the world right now. And now you are working with them to try and bring them to the States so they get known here. And it's a very mutual beneficial agreement. I wanted to know during discussions, what were some of the things that were brought to the table that both said, hey, we could have a mutual agreement on these things? How are they helping you and how are you helping them with their exposure?
They're just a wonderful group of people, and they're people who really care deeply about the performers in their community. So yeah, just to touch upon what you said about being the biggest adult live streaming company in the world, they really are. So if you go, you can look this up right now. Go look up like Wikipedia's like top 50 websites of 2025. And this is all websites in the whole world: Yahoo, Google, Amazon. They're number 41. And the only other adult websites in that category in the top 50 are tube sites: Pornhub, Xvideos, Xhamster. There's not even another hamming site in that top 50. So like they are the biggest. They get like 450 million active users monthly. This is not just people visiting the site. These are people who have signed up and have accounts and are spending money. 450 million a month. That's so much fucking traffic. So, but they really like have spent the last few years conquering all the other markets, Colombia, Europe. I know that they're working on Asia right now. And so, they'd never really had the opportunity to focus as much on the US as they wanted to. So when we started to develop a relationship, and that relationship was brought to us by my other partner, Andrew Nagel, and we started talking, there just seemed like this amazing symbiotic opportunity to work together. I have a people know me in the US market. I've worked really hard to, build a solid reputation and a foundation. And, they want to start pushing their brand out here more. And so it just felt like it made a lot of sense. And the one thing that I will always say to people is that, like, I am not a salesperson. And that means that if I don't believe in what you do, I can't sell you. Like, I just can't, because these are like my friends and my colleagues that I'm recommending, that you work with. And if I don't believe in you or I don't trust you, then I just can't from my heart do it. But they're really fantastic people, and they're constantly surprising me with how flexible they are, how open they are to feedback. I mean, the way that they treat their creators, their community. They have community managers for every country. They will personally, take a new, like, if there's any talent that wants to sign up for the website, they will purposely, like, give them a community manager who will literally, like, walk you through signing up for the site, show you how to use it, and really, like, hold your hand. And then they have, like, all these community events, and they have, like, discords, and they have, like, educational series and all this kind of stuff. And I just really love that, right? Because I love people who want to give back to the community that made them who they are. And that's something that StripChat and I are very aligned on.
I have to have a Howard Stern moment with you.
Okay.
I cannot stress how influential your podcast has been on mine, having coming from a radio background, having studied how people interact, and you just did it naturally. And the fact that YouTube, with over 100,000 views, all the subscribers, all these accolades you've done with your videos, did not send you the plaque, I think is complete bullshit. And that's very aggravating. And when I see when you got into the AVN Hall of Fame, I don't care what you say about complaining about it, that was well earned. But when we see those accolades of like, hey, you've accomplished this, you've done that, and you got the awards, you're now published in a book of 101 most influential world podcasts. It's everything. And you really have changed the face. Is that kind of the trophy now, since YouTube won't give it that to you? Was there a particular moment somebody took you to the side and you're doing it? Or well, I just wanted to know what was a moment in the podcast where it was like, I'm the best at this.
I don't know. I mean, I still, like, I really, and I hope this doesn't come off as, like, superficial or, like, humble, you know, pretending to be humble, but, like, I really don't think I'm a big deal. I don't, like, at all. And I still have so many people that I've reached to come on my podcast who have totally ghosted me and, like, completely ignore me. And I'm like, I'm not good enough. And sometimes I just think I'm annoying, or I think, like, people, like, this person probably doesn't like me, probably because they think I'm annoying, and they're right. I'm kind of annoying. Like, I find myself annoying. I don't, I don't know. I don't think I'm that great. I just don't. But I, I think that my podcast is done as well as it's done because of, my amazing guests and the people that have given me their time and their stories, and maybe because they trust me, they've opened up in a way that maybe they haven't on others. But I don't think it's because, like, I'm such a great interviewer, or I'm, like, the Terry Gross of, podcasting, which, by the way, huge compliment. Thank you so much. Though I have to say my favorite nickname that anyone's ever given me was Ho Rogan. I like that one a lot.
Was it off the Sisters of the Traveling Pants episode with Lena?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember. I feel like it was a comment that, like someone left on one of my videos. And I was like, oh, this is great. I love this Ho Rogan. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, getting in that book was a big deal. And when they reached out to me to say that they were going to include me, I didn't really think too much about it. But when I got the book and I looked at it and I looked at all the other podcasts that were in that book, like This American Life, which is my favorite podcast of all time. I love Ira Glass. Um, Serial, just My Favorite Murder, all of these like massive monumental podcasts, and to see like mine in there alongside all of these other names was just like crazy to me. So I think that was a moment where I did feel sort of vindicated, and I was like, oh, maybe like maybe like I am doing okay. But there are many other times, like when YouTube wouldn't give me my $100,000, 100,000 subscriber plaque, where I feel very small.
So full of it. You deserve that, rightfully so. There have been so many times on this podcast, and I've mentioned some of the guests prior to where it got deep, it got serious, and I was like, "Whoa, you can't joke about that." But it was such a wonderful moment where you knew the body of work you were doing was going to help somebody, and sometimes those moments stay, basically overshadow those really, really great conversations where it just everything went right. It never really does, but you can say like, "Hey, this is probably my best interview I've ever given." And I wanted to know, do you have a couple like that? I know you have so many strong, wonderfully like serious interviews. Tommy Gunn was one of my favorites. Charles Darrow was a little bit more funny, but he had some really important moments for people to recognize. August Ames, may she rest in peace, was one of those really important interviews, not only for mental health, but showing you that this podcast could be great. But I wanted to know, is there an interview that was fun? You learned something that you didn't anticipate, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for everybody else to see this. It's one of those good feeling conversations through and through that you hold high up in your repertoire of what you've done.
God, there's so many of them. It's so hard. I'll have these little moments where I'll think about, certain things, like remind myself of certain things in life. And it often comes from podcast interviews. Like I remember interviewing Kiss of Sins, and she talks about how when she gets depressed or sad, she just embraces the sadness. And I've spent my life like trying to run away from sadness and run away from feeling uncomfortable. I mean, that's why I drank, right? Because I never wanted to feel the way that I felt. I was going to drink myself out of that feeling into feeling something better. But she talked about how like she embraces the sadness. She puts on sad music. She lets herself cry, and that's how she gets through it. And that's what we all have to do, right? We have to sit in our uncomfortable feelings in order to process them and get through it. And so I often think about Kiss of Sins when I think about stuff like that. Another like stupid thing, like sometimes if I eat too much food and I feel like bloated and I'm like, oh God, what did I do? I'm gonna like put on 5 pounds from that. I think about Mia Malkova and how she told me like sometimes she eats too much food, and being a model who has to be body conscious like the rest of them, and she's like, you know what, and I just drink some more extra water that day, and I say fuck it, like tomorrow's a new day. Just like dumb little things like that like stick out in my mind and just remind me that like everybody's got a little nugget of wisdom. Everybody's got something to teach us. I mean, I will always say that my favorite episode is my first one with my parents. That's easy, right? It's also like the only one I was ever able to do with my dad. And so, that's my favorite one just because it's my parents and they have such a fascinating story, and it's a good kind of like look into my background and how I came to be where I am today.
There are people that are always there with us that support us, and I wanted to know, not just through your career, which is going on 30 plus years. I know it's still in the 20s, but you're going so strong. I know who is somebody that has always been a source of encouragement. Again, not mom and dad that have been there. I know Doc Johnson really gave you your first opportunity to move on from mom. Brad Armstrong, who for some reason everybody's been getting love from. He's like, oh, I don't do this all the time, but he's helped a lot of people in the industry. But is there someone that has, even before adult industry, photography, writing, that just, hey, I got your back, that you always see as that figurehead?
I mean, my husband, obviously. But I mean, from the beginning, I would have to say it's just always been my parents, especially my dad. I don't have a lot of close friends, and I don't have a lot of like close long-term friends. So I would have to say that, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about from the beginning, it's really just like my family.
Just listening to our conversation, just how close you and your dad were, just how close everything was with the family. I understand why your mom wanted you to be a writer. It kind of feels like when she saw you, she kind of saw him too. And it was kind of like, maybe we can still, he gave so much up for me, maybe we can push her in that direction too. I know they were so fond of your writing, which I think you need to drop as well. But Mademoiselle, I always end these with the most important question, and you're so chock full of these snippets that I'm curious to see what readily comes to mind. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Stick it with
Don't put it in writing. Be careful what you put in writing. Um, because that is something that can absolutely come back to haunt you. And it did actually. So when back in my drinking days, I had been working for Penthouse, and I was not happy with. I think they weren't really using me that much anymore. They were using another photographer, and I got really resentful. And I went on a forum and I wrote about how I thought the magazine looked really shitty. And, it was just this, it was just me being bitter, right? And that post got back to who was at the time the owner of Penthouse, Mark Bell. And he called my mom to tell her, like, do you know what your daughter like posted on this forum that like is now all over the internet and everyone's reading it? And it was very embarrassing, like I mean, he called, like, I'm 28, like I got, chastised like through my mom about, my reckless behavior. And I was blacklisted for a Penthouse for 9 years because of that. They would not work with me. So, if I was having a moment, I wanted to have a little bitch fest about, how I felt about, being pushed out of Penthouse, possibly because of my drinking. I should have just called a friend and been like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and then nothing would have happened. But I had to go put it in fucking writing, man. And now, like, that will always be there, especially with the internet now. Like, it's always there. So unless you want someone to call you out on your shit, if you have something to say that might be risky, don't, call them. Don't put it in writing, especially because my husband works in law. He says that all the time because he's like, discovery. If you get sued and they issue discovery, you're fucked. So like, don't fucking put it in writing. Like, yeah.
But how incredibly petty of him to call mom instead of call you. I do have
I
to.
don't think he had my number. I mean, this is like back before. I don't even know if I had a cell phone. This is a long time ago. Like, he called the office,
Okay.
you know?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me take the time to say how gracious I am to have this opportunity. This is one of those meet your hero moments where it's just so far gone at the time you think about it. You didn't anticipate it, and now it's finally here. That was Miss Holly Randall. Go check out number one, Wet Ink. You see it in the link below. It's at wetinkmag.com. Comes out quarterly. It's definitely worth signing up for the subscription service, and plus the emails, that little nice snippets when you're having a bad day. You can go to Instagram, Wet Ink Mag. It's easy to find. Follow Miss Randall at Holly Randall on Instagram and X, and also Patreon and YouTube, Holly Randall Unfiltered, where you can get the inside scope on how your favorite adult performers live their lives and what it's like to be in adult entertainment. And do not forget to get the book I'm getting recently, Dynasty, which is out now, also in the link, to see all her beautiful work the way she would like to present it in the perfect capture feature of photography. Mademoiselle, thank you so much. I'm incredibly humbled and grateful for your time. It has been a dream come true in the field of what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody else, be smart, be mindful, rock on. As always, ninja out.
Hey, I'm Holly Randall, and you are watching the John the Ninja podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Holly Randall. You can find my podcast, Holly Randall Unfiltered, on all podcast platforms and on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Holly Randall Unfiltered. Plus, you can find my brand new magazine, Wet Ink, at wetinkmag.com.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. Oh, your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.